Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Hope you are out there having an excellent Fat Tuesday. And most of all, preparing your hearts for the somber holiness of the Lenten season, the ultimate penitential season in the church, which begins tomorrow. As part of your preparation for penance, Pope Francis is continuing to pave the way to HE double hockey sticks with tons of fiddling with doctrine. Most recently, on February the 8th, as it happens, I brought you a show on a recent gathering 2 or 3 days before that on the Council of C9, 9 cardinals that overheard the testimony of 3 feminist apologists within the church, one of whom was named Linda Pocher. And I did that whole show on February the 8th saying, look, Francis continues to move the ball toward the goal. And she says Francis is, now it's come to light in a review of that meeting that he's very much in favor of the female diaconate, end quote. This is that nun who was invited to address the Vatican cardinals, Sister Linda Pocher, who was recently asked by Pope Francis to address a group of leading cardinals some day, 2 or 3 days before the 8th, the 4th or the 5th of February, on the role of women in the church, saying that Francis is very much in favor of it, the female diaconate. Now, there's this hilarious and hilariously frustrating tendency on the part of the credulous, or if you ask them, the incredulous, the Pope-splainers, to characterize people like me, but especially me, in 2 polarizing ways. When Francis moves into a period of relative silence, defensive silence, to cover for his last big gambit or chess move, poker play, they'll say, oh, you're imagining stuff. You just imagine stuff, Tim and other trads who are critics of Francis. He hasn't done anything for a month that resembles revolution in the church. But then they dither to the opposite perspective when Francis is actively making said gambits and poker plays. When he's making big, obvious moves and meeting with feminists who are coming away from the meeting saying he's very much in favor of the female diaconate. I'm going to read you the whole LifeSite article that was up yesterday, specifying what she said and what the context out of which what she said grew. Here's the interesting, really interesting thing that's very specific to a prediction that I made in late September, and I've recounted it a few different times. Here's what it was. She adds, I'll get to this in its due course, but this is the highlight of the article for me. I called that Francis is going to quasi-ordain female deacons using vague ambiguity that's not so vague, where he'll put his hands on the head of a male deacon and also maybe touch with his elbows or something. I'm just taking a guess, and I always have been, touching the deacon's wife and call the deacon's wife something like subdeacon or some term that's stripped of its historical context but is already a term, and then give the full ergonomic functionality of deacon to the deacon's wife. And then have all of the echo chamber argue against the sounding board in the public as to whether or not women have just been ordained. That's going to happen sometime, probably in early 2024. It could be any day, any week, any month. It'll definitely be ahead of October 2024, and I'll specify why using the words of Linda Pocher in a second. The church will have de facto female deacons sometime in 2024, and I already told you this, and it'll be with bodily postural ambiguities of ordination, with no real ergonomic functional ambiguities on the part of the women. They're going to be an expanded role. They will be doing the roles of deacons. The sole question will be, is this a violation of Pope John Paul II's Ordinatio Sacerdotalis? Toward the end of his pontificate, he actually made what many say is an infallible claim: women can never be deacons. That's what they're stumbling around. Okay? So there will be this bodily ambiguity. And listen to what Poker said, Poker, whatever this feminist Catholic woman's name is, who's a nun. She added that Francis, quote, is changing the way of thinking and living the difference between the ordained ministry and the baptismal priesthood. Isn't that exactly what I told you he would do? To the letter. Extending to all the baptized some rights that until recently belonged to bishops, priests, or religious. So the ergonomics of a bishop will be changed so that women can do them. But they're not just going to change the ergonomics and say, but women remain unordained. They're going to make the ordination of women as deacons ambiguous. This is what they're cooking up with their little sophistical groups right now. The ergonomics will be clear, 100%. Women are doing the roles of deacons. The sacramental formalism will be thrown into a doubtful light. That's what will happen. I told you all along. I want to read this. He's changing the way, according to Poker, of thinking and living the difference between the ordained ministry and the baptismal priesthood. In other words, all of us are priests insofar as we're baptized. That is St. Paul in the Bible, played upon by Luther and other liars in the early modern era, priesthood of all believers. And she's using that lie of Luther playing upon St. Paul in Scripture to fudge to this ergonomic / anatomical quasi-ordination that is going to be extended in a few months to women. So this article on LifeSite up yesterday, I want to give them credit because LifeSite's the main place I go to get my info. And it's key to this show. What do you know? So, Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, claims none invited to address Vatican cardinals. In review, I did a show, I guess 5 days ago. I thought it was a little longer than that, on February the 8th, giving you a preliminary report of this meeting before all the details leaked out. Sister Linda Pocher, I'm just going with the CH sound. Sister Linda Pocher, who was recently asked by Pope Francis to address a group of leading cardinals on the role of women in the church, said that Francis, quote, is very much in favor of the female diaconate. A nun who recently addressed Pope Francis and his C9 group of cardinals attests Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, though has no immediate plans to implement it. We probably need to talk about this. Probably need to talk about what this means, has no immediate plans to implement it. So that's the first thing that I'll address once. I wanted to go through this article because there's so much gold in it. The no immediate plans to implement just means that there is a study commission currently in the offing, currently more than in the offing, that's currently meeting. The study commission has been meeting, and we're going to get two key red letter dates at the end of this article, which is why I want to read the full thing. There are no actual finalized plans for this thing as of now, but that's what is being changed. We already know, she says, that Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate. But it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. Hold the phone, stop, period. Everyone listen. Pope Splainers, show them this 30 seconds of the show. Hold it right there, freeze frame. Do we have that record scratch sound? We need the record scratch sound. I thought we had it. That is the moment for the record scratch. Let me reread this. We already know that Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, but it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. There it is. There it is. Specifically at, but it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. See, how did she just, you leave it to a lady. God love them. We love the ladies here at Rules for Retrogrades. We do. Can't live without them. But Pope Francis is now feeling the polar opposite of that. So sometimes it's hard to live with him, Pope Francis says, because she just said the quiet part out loud. With study commissions in enacting the Sankt Gallen Mafia agenda over the last 11 years, Pope Francis has said all but 5 of these words about given topics. You understand what I mean by that? We already know that the Pope is very much in favor of communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. Everyone knew that, even at the beginning of the pontificate. But Cardinal Casper often said things like this: it is still something we are trying to understand, period. You leave it to a man, very clever man like Cardinal Walter Casper, who's in Francis's crew of, in his brain trust of the heterodox. They stop after how to understand. We're trying to understand. You talk to Father James Martin S.J. or Tucho Fernandez or Cardinal Supich. You talk to any of these guys and they'll say, we already know that the Pope is very much in favor of SS unions. But it is still something we are trying to understand, full stop. Right? Only once Francis is undertaken to speak with Linda Poacher did she accidentally add the most honest 5 words. See, full honesty is not welcome here. She didn't say, we already know that the Pope is very much in favor of the female diaconate, but it is still something we are trying to understand. No, she said it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. Well, that's too much honesty. You don't say the whole truth, Miss Poacher. You just cooked Francis's eggs. If people were listening with ears attuned to the truth the way they were at the beginning of the Francis pontificate before everyone went into denial mode. You understand the difference? The study commission, the Sankt Gallen Mafia study commission that is so central to all the revolution that he's brought, to all of these Gallen agenda items, adultery, giving communion to adulterers, blessing SS unions, female deacons, viri probati, which is gonna be addressed in 2024 too, and number 5, let's just say intercommunion with Lutherans, according to Walter Brandmuller. All of these have to be like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Put all the normies to sleep. After they're all asleep, you say yes. The answer is yes. And the way that you buy, the way you purchase, if you're Francis in the Gallen group, the way you purchase their willingness to sort of patiently sit there and watch you dither, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, no, is by saying, look, the Catholic answer is no to this question of doctrinal revolution. We are no, but we just want to have these study commissions that the C9 oversees, Council of 9 Cardinals oversees, in order to better understand it. Why not? Can you fly with your arms? No. Yeah, but I'm going to spend all this time in fiduciary resources on studying why I can't fly with my arms. We already know. All he means is it is still something we're trying to understand how to put into practice. In other words, how to cook up the actual sophistry sufficiently just this side north of incredible, sufficiently credible, I guess, to fool the idiot pope-splainers and normies out there, like they did with Amoris Laetitia. If you believe Amoris Laetitia didn't mean communion for the divorced and civilly remarried, then I have a pack of Wolverines that I want to sell you for house pets. Then you must have been born yesterday. You ain't going to make it. And Pope Francis, he's never kind to those whom are loyal to him, because then he made a mockery of you. in April of 2016 when he published Amoris Laetitia, and several of you defiled yourselves saying, no, this doesn't mean what it says. Well, then 5.5 months later, you know what he did. He magisterialized the teaching. He put it into the Acta Apostolicae Sedis. This is the only correct interpretation. So it's never like he rewards you for your slavish loyalty. And by slavish loyalty, I don't mean what the Orthodox say about all Catholics. I have a loyalty to the Pope too. That doesn't mean that our loyalty is slavish to the extent that we don't believe in the principle of contradiction. You see, you're always going to get burned when you try to lie for a worldly master. And yes, you guys do make a worldly master of even the Pope.